Chapter 18, Subdivision and Development. In this chapter, we're going to describe the various methods of developing and subdividing land. We're going to identify the impacts of environmental regulations and other laws on sales, health, safety, and building regulations. All right, so to kick it off, assemblage is when you assemble a lot. You're basically taking two or more lots and putting them together, assembling them. That's assemblage. All right, where you take two or more lots and you put them together. And the increase in value is known as plottage value. Now, the subdivider basically buys undeveloped acreage and figures out how they could divide it into smaller lots for sale to individuals or for developers, or sometimes for the subdivider's own use, because sometimes the subdivider themselves is a developer. And then after doing everything that's required to prepare the land for development, getting all the permits and all that stuff, then they would sell those lots or develop them. Now, a developer builds homes or other buildings on lots, and then they sell them. And sometimes the subdivider themselves can be that builder, that developer. In New Jersey, when a second lot is sold off of a larger parcel, it's now classified as a subdivision because you're dividing the lot now, breaking it up. Instead of assembling it, you're doing the opposite. You're dividing it up. So anytime you sell a smaller lot off of a larger lot, it's now a subdivision. Now, the state of New Jersey allows municipalities to decide what constitutes a major subdivision that requires a public hearing and what is considered a minor subdivision, which does not. Now, minor subdivisions, small subdivisions, one or two lots, I mean, it depends on what the municipality considers minor. They don't require, that do not require new streets or off-site improvements or public hearings for the approval. Major subdivisions require public hearings to get their approval because they could have a bigger impact on the community depending on their size. They could affect the schools, the school system, police, fire, the burden on the additional burden on the community. They have more lots and issues to address and must be given the public an opportunity to pose questions. However, leave it up to New Jersey to come up with new rules in a fashion that they claim is to address the affordable housing and low income issue for housing. They could skip a lot of this stuff now. They don't have to follow most of the laws that the builders normally do. If it's for those reasons, which blows me away, because then a lot of these subdivisions that are they use that as a loophole to get away with building and ignoring rules so that they could then build their housing, and then none of it is low income or affordable. Now, just like the Mount Laurel court decisions, none of it ended up being affordable. Now, some examples of issues for larger subdivisions is they need to deal with the roads, the maybe additional traffic, the burden on the local schools, public works, the sewer systems, the water demand, emergency services like police, fire, and waste removal, water, sewer treatment, drainage, and environmental impact because they built up over all that land that could have absorbed the water. These things have to be addressed, and they need to get those approvals for those major subdivisions. Now, land planning precedes the actual subdividing process, which has to comply with the municipality's master plan. Planning boards and planning commissioners are often addressed. Dedication, what is that? It's when you give lands to the government for a greater public use, like streets, schools, and parks. You needs to know that for exams. Assurance by bonding that the sewer and street costs are going to be paid for. Compliance with the local zoning ordinances governing the use of the lots The fire and safety ordinances and building and construction codes need to be followed. And they need to do a percolation test. Ooh, this will be on exams without a doubt. Sometimes referred to as a perk test for short. It's a test of how well soil absorbs liquids for drainage and runoff to build septic systems and its capacity to absorb water. So that's basically what it is. It's a measurement of the land's capacity to absorb water, how quickly it absorbs that water. All right, so let me see if we can reword this a little bit better. Perk test is a test of how well soil absorbs liquids for drainage. No, okay, it's got it there. Perfect. Okay, so let's do some highlighting now. What dedication is and what a perk test is on page 340. Let me know when you got the highlights.
Got it.
Okay. So here is an example from this old house showing you how they actually perform a percolation test. Let me just set up for the streaming of this.
One of the first things to consider when building a house like this out in the country is a septic plan. What to do with the waste and water that needs to leave that building. Now, it needs to go into a septic system. There's a couple of key components to a septic system. One is a septic tank. Now, this tank will accept waste and water. Now, the solids will stay in the tank and be broken down over time by bacteria. But the water that'll pass through the tank will now go out through a leach field. Now, a leach field is a series of pipes, perforated pipes, that sit below the substrate of the soil, and the water will trickle or drip down through the ground. Now, to determine if you can even have a septic system, it starts with a perk test. Brendan Zabrickis with the town of Essex, you've had your share of perk tests, right?
I sure have.
So what's a perk test?
Well, that stands for a percolation test, and it's a field test to simulate how wastewater will travel down through the soil once a septic system is built on top of it.
How fast it'll pass through, sort of like water going down through the coffee grounds in a filter.
That's a good analogy, yes.
Right. Okay. So what have you done to get us to this point?
Well, previous to this, we dug several deep holes, about 10 feet down into the ground.
Okay.
That allowed us to get a look at the various soil layers that you're going to find whenever you dig here in New England.
All right, so this is topsoil. What are you seeing? What am I seeing?
Well, as you just mentioned, this is your topsoil. Then you go through a layer known as subsoil. You then finally get down to a layer that is really the glacial material. In other words, the glacier brought it in.
Yeah.
We have determined that this is the most restrictive or most limiting layer in the soil profile. And the septic system code requires that we actually perform the perk test in that most limiting layer.
So you're testing at almost the worst place?
The worst place that you're going to have underneath that system, that's correct.
So that looks pretty dense right here, so not
That's
accept
right.
water too well?
That's exactly right. So what we did after that is, knowing what we had in the deep holes, we just had the machine dig down a shelf to the top of that most restrictive layer, and we're ready to dig a perk hole that's about 12 inches in diameter and about 18 inches deep.
Okay.
Then we're going to fill that hole with water and let the hole sit for a little while to make it saturated. That will be a great simulation of how soil will behave when it's wet underneath a leach facility. Then we will use a ruler to watch the rate at which the water drops down through the hole over time.
Yeah.
And that will give us what's called a perk rate, or percolation
So what
rate.
happens if the rate doesn't drop fast enough?
If it doesn't drop fast enough, that would be a limitation to the site that you may not be able to build a septic system in this particular
This is a pretty
location.
important test then.
It is very important. So now I'm just going to take this water, pour it into the hole against a board that I've already got set up.
What's the board do?
What this does is it puts the water into the hole more gently so that we do not stir up the fine material in there.
Yeah.
And we want to bring this water level up to about 12 inches, and we're going to maintain that level for about 15 minutes, again, to simulate saturated conditions in the soil.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll check that. We're about 9 so far, so we're going to need another bucket of water, Richard.
All right, Brennan, it has been 15 minutes.
We want to see the time it takes to go from 9 inches down to 6 inches. Well, it dropped down to 6 inches in about 27 minutes.
So is that good?
Yeah, I've seen quicker than that, but it's somewhere right in the middle.
But you're telling us that we passed the test, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for your help on the perk test.
Of course.
Thanks for watching.
Yep, that's how they do a perk test. It's no big technology to it. It's just how well the soil absorbs the water, the liquid, and that's what the perk test is for. Now, subdividing, the subdivider seeks out to raw land that they could profitably subdivide. Now, this determine if proposed use is consistent with zoning. They locate the financial backers. Then, yeah, often they they already tried to get the permits for everything. Try to get it ready, the land to build on before they even purchase it, because they make offers, contracts to purchase the land subject to them being able to get the permits for a lot of this stuff. So they put an offer in, and then they try getting all this stuff done so they could spend a lot of money trying to do all this stuff before they even purchase the property. And then they locate the financial backers, and then they initiate marketing strategies. Title to the individual parcels is transferred as lots are sold using a blanket mortgage. Remember, a blanket mortgage covers the lot, right? And that lot could be subdivided. And so you could sell off a smaller lot off of the larger parcel without having to pay back the entire loan, because a blanket mortgage has what's known as a partial release clause that only would require part of the loan to be paid back. Remember, because most loans have that alienation clause, also known as the due on sale clause in the note, that states that when you sell or transfer the ownership of a property, the loan needs to be paid back in full. Well, with a subdivision like this, it's often bought with a blanket mortgage that allows them to sell off smaller lots off of the larger one until the loan is paid back in full. Now, impact fees, these are paid by the community or paid to the community by developers. But we're seeing, at least here in New Jersey, they're shifting to using pilot programs more. So instead of which they should be charging impact fees to the developers, but they're shifting away from that for some reason. So it's paid to the municipality by a developer to help the community cope with added demand and use of the city services, like the police, fire, schools, garbage, public works, water, sewage demands. So they should be charging impact fees still, but instead they're doing these pilot program things where they're giving huge tax breaks to developers in exchange for them to build affordable housing. Problem, what I'm seeing around here is, like in my town of Linden, they're giving these huge long-term tax breaks to these developers that build these high-rise buildings, and then none of them are low-income or affordable housing, or they claim they are, but what kind of studio apartment is $2,500 a month? You know, how's that affordable housing? It's ridiculous. So they're not really building what their intended purpose was in order to get those breaks. So I refer to the impact fees, though, as the legal bribes that they needed to negotiate with municipalities to pay that municipality in order to get approvals for the projects. But like I said, now you're seeing these other ways, those pilot programs that they're shifting to a little more. Okay. Now the community can ask for a fire truck to be donated or a few police cars, or if it's a big complex or big building that's going to add some huge impact to the community, they could ask them to build a school. Yeah, this is blowing my mind because the mayor that's running our town right now, uh, he's not charging impact fees. He's doing the pilot program, and now he's running the city into debt in order to get. Well, cities aren't allowed to run to debt according to the law in New Jersey. So what they'll do, it's not debt. They sell um, bonds and such, so that they could try to get the money for that. But then they need to be paid back. So all they're doing is they're pushing the debt down the road. But technically, there's no debt because they sold the bond. So technically speaking, there's no debt there. It's a way for politicians to play sneaky games of building up your debt and pushing the can down the road for somebody to pay it at some time in the future. And hopefully it'll be the opposing political party at the time, and then they could be like, "Oh, see how you mismanaged this city? The debt went up under your rule." Oh, politics is a dirty game. All right, so let's see. Under subdivision plans, 341, under here where they talk about the process that we just spoke about, right? Using a blanket mortgage with a partial release clause. And then highlight the impact fees. And here beneath that, they just talk about lots and blocks, Every city block, well, that's a block. They call it a block. That's a block. And each individual property sits on its own lot. So subdivisions are laid out by lot and block, and they're usually numbered. Every block has a number, every lot has a number. Sometimes they're designated by number alone, sometimes by letter, sometimes by number and letter. So blanket mortgage, once again, it's got that partial release clause in it, allows a developer to sell a smaller lot off the larger one. So here's an example of that. You have one big lot that they got a blanket mortgage for, and now they build a house, they sell off this one lot off of the larger lot, and then they only have to pay back 1/6 of the loan. They sell off another lot, and so forth, so on and so forth. They pay it back as they sell off the smaller lots. It's kind of like a modern. It's kind of like a modified alienation or due on sale clause, because the due on sale clause would require it to be paid back in full anytime you transfer any ownership on the lot. So here's a municipal tax map, kind of looks like a mini subdivision. Well, that's basically what it is. Every area of town is composed of a bunch of subdivisions that builders built over time. Now they just put these maps together, and now these are municipal tax maps. But you can see on them, every block has a number in bold with a big, here in this case, it's a big rectangle. Sometimes it's a circle. And then each lot is numbered individually as well. Like over here, lot 302. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then they go over here to the next lot, 332, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Here you see go all the way around, block number 336. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Goes all the way around out of sight, comes back 36 lots on that block. It's a big block. So there it is, zoomed in a little bit more. And you can see how the blocks are numbered and the lots are numbered. And then they even got the sizes. of the lots. You know, how wide the front of the lot is, how deep it is on this side and this side. And you see, not every block is square. Look at this one on the corner here. You know, even though it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, it also has a rounded edge. Over here, this one, check this out. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners. So when you get a survey done, you're going to pay a surveyor. You should pay a surveyor the extra money to bang the wooden or steel rebar stakes in the ground so that you know where your property boundaries are. So you could tie a string around all of them, and you could now literally see your boundaries of your property. Now, prior to subdividing, the developer needs to figure out how they're going to lay out the land. Are they going to use the classic gridiron pattern like this, or a curvilinear pattern? And then are they going to use like a conventional garden estates or clustered estates so that they could have more open space and parkland? But the lot sizes will be smaller with the clustered estates versus the conventional garden estates, which each person will then have a bigger property lot. Okay, here is a small subdivision. Here's, you can see the outline in black. Here's the street on the left, and then you can see the big outline in black. That's the one property, which then was carved up and subdivided. The red, you can see they put a street here. That's a cul-de-sac street. And look, each lot is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you got its lot dimensions down around it, etc. Okay, so this is known as a plat map. There are many plats on a plot, or many plots on a plat. A plat map is a map of a subdivision. Now, this is just so happens to be a very small one, only 6 or 8 properties. So a plat is a map of a subdivision that indicates the location and boundaries of each individual property. So it's also considered a legal description of land. So let's highlight plat of a subdivision is a map of a development indicating the location and boundaries of the individual properties. Okay, we got land planning. Let's see. Covenants and conditions. A covenant's a legal promise, so covenants and restrictions. Restrictions are placed in deeds by private parties, not by the government. Government has their own powers that they could use to restrict how you use the land. So these restrictions are called restrictive covenants when they're placed in deeds by private parties. That private party could be an owner of just a single lot, or it could be a subdivider or builder. Private parties are not by governments. Like I said, governments have their own powers. Now, ownership of property estates that are based on restrictions, because they have restrictions that cannot be violated, are those estates and land are called fee determinable, defeasible, or conditional fee estate. Remember that from chapter 6? Ownership forever based on restrictions, as long as those restrictions aren't violated. Now, those restrictions can be dictating the minimum or maximum lot sizes, you know, things of that nature. A moratorium is a halt to further development in the area. And it's important for a developer to record their permits. I was just listening to the news this morning before coming to class, and seeing, you know, all the markets with stock and stuff are taking a bit of a hit because of an IBM report that that warns about all this spending in AI. You know, it's getting ridiculous how much money they're spending on AI, and you're seeing these data center issues all over the place. Well, New York just issued a moratorium on building any data centers in New York. So what is a moratorium? It's a halt to development in the area. it's important for a developer to record their permits and any approvals they may have for doing any construction or subdivisions. They got to record them in the public records so that in the event there's a moratorium that's called, halt for further development, the project, if it's already recorded and they already got the approvals, can continue. Even though they called for a halt to development in the area, those projects are allowed to continue or start. Now, the FHA, Federal Housing Administration, has minimum standards for new construction materials and occupancy. They want it to be majority owner occupied, which must be majority owner occupied in the complex if they're going to be able to get FHA loans to buy these houses or condos. Now, it's estimated that the development cost is between 4 to 6 times the cost of the raw land to develop a subdivision. So there's a good estimate or guesstimate number. Density zoning. If something is dense, that means it's tightly packed, right? So density zoning is zoning that restricts the maximum number of homes that can be built per acre. Or let's word that another way. Zoning for the most homes that could be built per acre. Still saying the same thing. Okay. Now, FHA has loan limits, depending on which county you're in, for how much they'll lend you for 1, 2, 3, 4, family houses. And the FHA approved condos, they have a condo list for approvals. The condominium complexes need to get approved, and when they're approved, that approval is good for 20 years. Then they need to reapply to get approved again, make sure that it's mostly owner occupants there. The construction didn't change at that point. It's just now a matter of, is it mostly owner occupants still? And how much money do they have in their reserve accounts, and the insurance and all that stuff is up to snuff in order for people to be able to get FHA loans in those complexes. So did you guys see this in chapter 14 or 15? I forget which one it was, about the FHA loan limits by county. So if we have it by county, we'll just go by New Jersey. This is the HUD website for 2026. Let's just send that. We put it by county, and we selected New Jersey from the drop down. And now you can see the county name over here. And then 1 family, 2 family, 3 family, and 4 family loan limits. And then the median sale price. What's the average sale price in that county? All right, so in Atlantic County, it's one of the cheaper counties. They'll lend you up to 700. I've seen these numbers creep up. Not just creep up, jump up tremendously. For a 1 family house, they'll loan $730,000. 2 family, it's almost $1 million. 3 family, it's over $1 million. 4 family, it's almost $1.5 million. With the average price of $635,000. What's going on in New Jersey that the real estate prices are going up so much? Camden County is even cheaper, $630,000 for a 1 family. I don't know about saying $630,000 is cheap, but you get where I'm coming from. They got an average home sale price of $548,000. Some of the more expensive counties are like Bergen, where 1 family house they'll lend you $1.2 million, 1.6 for 2 family, 1.9 for 3 family, 2.4 million for a 4 family. What kind of rents you got to charge to be able to pay that? And then with New Jersey's taxes on top of that, that's insane. But these are the loan limits, how much the FHA will insure loans for these different amounts in the different counties. It looks like most of the counties are popping up to that highest price range now. Geez, what could possibly cause real estate prices to go up? Could it be investors buying properties and the government paying for rent? That happens a lot with the illegal immigration. Um, there's also demand for housing, supply and demand. That'll drive prices up. Also, government regulations and red tape, maybe for environmental reasons or whatever reasons that the politicians give. All kinds of red tape like that will drive up the costs of production for the components that are needed in real estate to when you're building. That drives up the prices. What else drives up prices? Oh, fossil fuels like the gas or diesel that the trucks need to transport all the goods to the stores and then to the work site, and then all that machinery, the heavy machinery used to in construction that runs off of diesel. Oh, how much is diesel per gallon? You know, all these things play a role. And what's driving up the cost of fuel other than taxes? Could be political decisions. Our governor in New Jersey, with the what's going on in Iran there, right, Straits of Hormuz, the conflicts like that drive up, make a shortage of fuel. With the short, not to us, we make our own, but to go to Europe, so we still need to. That still affects our pricing. So we have to. That's why we're over there trying to make it so those ships, carrying all that fuel can pass safely. We don't need it. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, America, because it's the oil. It's about the oil. Yeah, for everybody, not for us. We got our own oil. That's for the oil that's shipping to Europe and Asia and other parts of the world. We're just there trying to facilitate that they get it for free, or they get it there safely. Now, we're spending a lot of money for that too. But either way, as the fuel gets choked up there, doesn't come through, the cost of it goes up. That affects the prices of housing based on, what I just said, like all the tractor trailers and heavy machinery and equipment that's used in construction. It drives up the cost of everything. Cost of production, everything from those wall switch light covers to the switch itself to the paint, all of these things. The cost of lumber. You've seen both Obama and then again Biden put all kinds of restrictions on lumber. And getting that lumber, and then the lumber mills, the sawmills that cut it. The all of these things drive up the cost. But I mean, when it's cheaper to buy steel than it is to buy wood, something's wrong. Something ain't right. And that's because politicians got their dirty little fingers in there and they started playing with regulations under the guise of environmental protection, but is it protecting the environment? A lot of these legislation things they put in there, it's just additional red tape. That's like those carbon credits that Al Gore sells. If a company uses a lot of carbon because they're using fossil fuels, they're polluting to the environment more, but that's okay if you pay us. You could offset your carbon credits. What a scheme that is. How is this guy not in jail? But yet politicians backed him to sell this nonsense, and then they push it, and then they pass laws on this stuff. Carbon credits. Yeah, pay me and you could pollute more. That's basically what a carbon credit is. All right. But just to show you how politics plays a role in real estate at a lot of levels, from the cost of development to selling it. All right. And then condo complexes need to be approved. So we click on that link there. And we can see the HUD's database for Condos. Let's look up New Jersey. What's a town that has a lot of condominiums? Edison? Let's look up Edison. So, like I said, these need to be approved every 20 years. So here's one, Aspen. That's an older complex. They were rejected, even though there's almost 2% of FHA loans there already. That means that complex was once approved for FHA. Exist comments. What is the comments? Let's click on that. Never clicked on that before. Rejected for missing signed and completed appendixes on a letterhead. Please state whether any changes to the recorded condominium instruments have been made since the issuance of the last approval. If changes have been made, please provide them in sufficient HOA fidelity insurance and missing previous year's actual year-end income and expense statement for the complex. Okay, that's why they were rejected. So somebody put in an application to get an FHA loan there, then the complex just needs to submit the package of the required documents. Apparently, they're missing a lot of stuff, so they were rejected. So as of right now, nobody at the Aspen can get an FHA loan to finance the purchase of a condo there. And this application was last submitted and rejected here in 2018. Here's one that expired in 1990. Oh, let me see. Status date 1990, expiration date 2011. Sorry, 2011. Brookview Commons. Okay. As you can see, a lot of these were already previously approved. They have some FHA loans in them already. Edison Hollow Common. Yeah. So you're seeing them expiring. Expired, withdrawn, expired, rejected, expired, rejected, rejected, expired, rejected, expired, 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 withdrawn, rejected. As of right now, there's not a single condo complex in Edison that's approved for FHA loans. All they need to do is submit a complete package and have required insurance and such. But it looks like some of them don't. And so they're getting rejected. Interesting, huh? So the most common loan, the FHA loan, they're not able to get to buy the housing there. I'm just going to copy those links and share them with you guys. All right. So dedication is when you give land to the government for public use, like streets, schools, and parks. Like when a builder does a subdivision and they build all those roads, they can either keep them private and then they have to maintain them, or they could dedicate them and they'll become municipal roads. Moratorium, a halt to further development. Covenants and restrictions. I wrote here restrictive covenants that are placed in deeds by private parties, not by governments. See page 6 or chapter 6, page 104. Let me know when you guys have this stuff. Also throw out a poll, see who's actually here. Good, good. Supposed to have a heat wave this week. Supposed to be hot today. Ten a.m. It's already 82 degrees. They're supposed to be in the high 90s today. Tomorrow over 100. Let me know when you guys have it.
I got it.
All right, so I'll change slide. So development cost, there's that one where I told you 4 to 6 times the actual cost of the land is the estimate. You don't need to know this for exams, so don't worry about highlighting this. Just go down here to subdivision density. Density zoning ordinances restrict the average maximum number of houses that can be built per acre, or it's zoning for the most homes that can be built per acre. It means it's two ways of saying the same thing. That's what density zoning is. Now, problems in the past, New Jersey environmental issues we're going to go over now. We had problems in the past with soil contamination, still do. Future buyers may face liability for cleanup under the law called CERCLA. EIS are environmental impact study reports that could have an impact on your construction project. It's required before any federal project that these studies be done. They affect the quality of life, like contamination. It requires info about planned project and possible solutions. The environmental impact of this development plan, you have to check for contamination, see if the soil's contaminated. I mean, when you buy a new home, do you assume that it's not built on contaminated land? If you're buying new construction, a brand new house, you gotta be careful with that, because there have been brand new construction developments built on former garbage dump sites. Could have contaminated soil under them, could have methane gas leaking and all kinds of other gases leaking out from it. You know, New York always complains about us because they only go through that Secaucus area where you get all those, smokestacks and the smells over there. But you come over, you go over to Staten Island, Staten Island was built on a garbage dump. We got anyway, the environmental impact study, you check for contamination. Maybe there's a rare species of insect or animal or bird or something there that that'll put the kibosh on your construction project. They check to see how it affects the traffic and drainage issues, etc. What is the environmental impact of this project? And if, God forbid, human remains are found on the property, is this a crime scene where somebody got murdered and their body was dumped there? Or is this something of historical significance? How long has that body been there? Was it there for over 100 years? Is this a historical site of significance where another historic battle was fought, perhaps? Well, that could put a damper on your project there, at least for a while. You guys remember when these terrorists took down the World Trade Centers? and then they were digging deeper to build a foundation for the Freedom Tower. You guys remember that what they found underneath it? That they found an old ship. I used to say it. They found a pirate ship under there. I don't know about a pirate ship, but they found an old ship buried underneath where the World Trade Center stood. And the World Trade Center had parking garage underneath it. They had decks that went down deep, deep, deep underneath it. And underneath that, they found a ship. Anybody ever hear of that? You guys ever hear about that?
I did not hear about that, no.
Well, that put a halt to that project that they were trying to rush. Here.
If you have a crack like this,
Oh.
well,
Hold on, that's a commercial. Let's see. I'm seeing a commercial on the feed.
you have a problem. Today I'm learning how a cracked wall might mean your foundation is sinking.
It always points towards the area where.
Why are we seeing this? Is that a commercial? Let me just go right to the YouTube. The YouTube.
Here's what a whole home water filtration system costs,
Including installation. Tap below to check price.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty significant find. It's the kind of thing that archaeologists are always hoping to find in landfill deposits. It's a ship. It was probably put here around in the early 1800s. We know that this area, this whole block, was filled in between about 1790s and the 1830s. So we figure the ship probably predates that and was used as part of the landfilling process. So they filled the ship with dirt and rocks, and in conjunction with timber cribbing features or landfill retaining structures on either side, sunk them to the bottom of the river and used it to create new land along the waterfront. At this point, we really don't know much. So we kind of just have to continue our analysis, see what what's under the boat, what's in the dirt around it, and see if that can tell us anything. We're assuming it was placed here in the early 1800s based on historic maps and how they show us how the shoreline progressed. Basically, they would just sink it little by little and gradually extend the shoreline, and usually build new wharves and piers out into the river, leaving a slip in between so boats could continue to sail in and out. And then as waterfront land became more and more valuable and more necessary, they would continue filling in and extending the shoreline gradually. And it's tied into commerce and trade of the early 19th century. There have been ships found in the city before. There was a famous one on Water Street found in the early 1980s. And it's the kind of thing that everyone always hopes to find. It's an exciting find. It's a big find. It's something that's interesting. We can get a lot of information about it. It's a very unique part of history that, we wouldn't have access to otherwise.
And in the meantime, a lot of construction workers are standing around. And in the meantime, a lot of construction workers are standing around doing nothing while they wait for that local historic society to do their excavation work there. What's going on with this?
It's sinking.
Commercial.
For example, this corner here, we're down.
What the hell is that? All right, give me 1 second here. My Zoom controls. All right, yeah, and the slideshow, that was a commercial. Huh. Usually we don't see commercials when it's routed in that way to the slideshow. But okay, but you saw the video there. Look at that. So it put a halt to the construction at the World Trade Center site for Ground Zero. They found that ship there. And when they tested the wood, first of all, how is that wood still there? Oh my gosh. Those ship makers back then, they really knew how to treat the wood, huh? That wood didn't crumble away and disintegrate over hundreds of years. It's it's still there, and you can still see those wood planks that were buried in the water, sunk in the water and buried under the land there. That's amazing. But they did testing on the wood and they found that it was actually from the United States, that ship. It actually had the wood that was created from the same area where they got the wood for the Liberty Bell in Pennsylvania. So they got this wood from New England, up in New England somewhere. And if you go to Discovery Channel, if you guys go to the, like Discovery Channel and History Channel, and you look up, the information about this ship, you can see they found all kinds of other stuff too, all kinds of like jewelry and, other things, like cups and chalice, all kinds of stuff that you'd find on a ship, a few things of pieces of old money, coin. But you hear what she said that was kind of interesting. You guys know where the World Trade Center was, right? That used to be the waterfront. She was talking about how they filled the ship with dirt and rocks and they sank the ship and then they filled it with dirt to build up new shoreline. Most of New York City is actually man-made. It's that land was never there. They built it up that way. And look how far into the land that the Trade Center was. That peninsula went from being very skinny to getting really fat over the years. And that was all due to the man-made peninsula that is New York City. They built it out. They built out the shoreline into the water, and they got all these high rises there now. Could you imagine all these high rise buildings sitting on that man-made land? Well, this is what do you call it? That's some shaky ground to be on. As a matter of fact, you see what happened in New York in the news the other day with one of the high rises they got there? They were going to build 16 additional stories on top of an existing building when construction workers found the steel girders starting to buckle and bend. They're going to add 16 more stories of luxury housing. Would you want to live in that building? They're going to fix it. Would you want to live there? I don't know about me. You guys hear about that story? It's not. All right.
Yeah, well,
so let's highlight environmental agencies are required to conduct studies. Those EIS. Go ahead. Let's do the highlights on that. Let me know when you got it.
Got it.
Okay. So before any construction can take place, the environmentally sensitive areas, you got to first get permission from the DEP, which probably regulates it. The DEP is New Jersey's Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA is the federal agency. The DEP is New Jersey. So the New Jersey DEP regulates the wetlands areas under the Wetlands Protection Act of 1970 that granted them the authority to regulate those areas. Yeah, most of these areas are regulated by laws that were named after the area, like the Highlands Water Protection Act, the Pinelands Protection Act, CAFRA, that's the Coastal Area Facility Review Act. Waterfront Development Act gives them the authority to regulate all these areas before you do any construction. So builders and developers should consult a guide they put together called Buy Bob. Stands for Before You Buy, Before You Build, to see who you need to get permission from, what regulations you need to follow before doing any constructions in these environmentally sensitive areas. Now, who deemed them environmentally sensitive? Well, the law, politicians. And during Obama's presidency, he expanded greatly the EPA's regulatory touch of what they can regulate. Some areas, it was you got like these gullies that are good for water runoff and drainage during floods or such. Some of them have never seen water in decades. Well, they were given the authority to regulate those areas because water could be there. Okay. Also, if you ever go onto a farm, you know how farms they have some roads on the farms. They're just dirt roads. They're not actually paved, on the farm and around those big barns in the areas where they do their work. You get the tractors and such. And if it rains, sometimes they get big puddles there in the in those roads on the farmland. They're not like for the public. They're just the roads and the driveway. Well, under the new additional powers that were given to the EPA, if that water that's sitting there is over a certain size, the EPA can regulate it. And then the EPA was really stretching their authority with farmers. I don't know what their deal is with their war on farmland and against farmers. Guess they want us to get everything from overseas, right? Buy our food from China too. But they put together a lot of restrictions, a lot of additional red tape, and harassed a lot of farmers. Hell, they even went out with their guns and everything and to enforce the law against some farmers. And I can tell you stories where they actually shot and killed farmers, right in front of their family. It's I got a bunch of these. I got a bunch of these stories. I could even show you the news reels for them. I got them saved in my browser. They're unfortunately, they've really stretched their authority that was granted to them by the president, and then they really stretched it for political reasons mostly, and had nothing to do with the environment. And there were a lot of lawsuits that came about because of that. And over time, a lot of those legislations got struck down because of the overreach from the government. That story I told you about the killing that the father on that farm. They were all adult children, and they killed the father on the farm over where his animals were grazing. Which they had them grazing on this land since before we became a country. That farm was there before we even became a country. And now the EPA got authority over it, and they said you can't be there anymore. Otherwise, we're going to fine you thousands of dollars a day, and we could take your cattle and slaughter them. And they just kept taking their cattle out to graze. EPA came out with all their government people with their machine guns and weaponry, weapons of war, as they like to say when it suits them. And they shot and killed the father who was standing there on a horse, and right in front of his kids. And then they threw his kids in jail. And they sat there for a couple of years through the whole Biden presidency. And then, through Obama's presidency, through the whole Obama presidency. And then when Trump got elected, around that time, the Supreme Court finally heard their case. Had nothing to do with Trump. I'm just giving a timeline. The Supreme Court ruled that they overreached their power. They overstepped their boundaries. They released the kids from prison, and they gave them an apology sorry for killing your dad, which is a shame. But this is all because of political decisions under the guise of protecting the environment. So a lot of these environmental protection laws, may not even protect the environment that great. I told you guys about that development in Clark. You got the Clark Shopping Center, and then right across the street from it is a golf course. Both of those are on contaminated land. But they were able to build on them because they stripped the first 6 feet of soil and they put fresh soil on top of the contaminated land. That now you got golf courses there and clubs and restaurants and supermarkets and fast food places. Guess it's who you know. Get that to get past those environmental restrictions. So the DEP, they regulate all these areas. They protect the state's drinking water when paving over more than 1 acre. That's covered under the Highlands Water Protection Act. The Pinelands Protection Act regulates 22% of the state's land in the Pine Barrens. The Wetlands Act requires permits to excavate, fill, or build in certain areas near the anywhere where there's water. I actually had a student from one of my classes that he had his property was in Piscataway, and he had a front porch, with the overhang. You got the columns with the overhang, and termites got to it. And so the porch started collapsing, and so did the overhang, because everything kind of sunk. So he wanted to tear that down and build a new front porch. Well, this is after they gave the EPA those additional regulations. And so, the EPA will pass on some of their regulatory authority to local environmental agencies like the DEP. And so he wanted to get a permit from the city to rebuild this front porch, to tear it down and rebuild the front porch that was eaten up by termites. And the city said, yeah, sure, no problem. But you also need to get permission from the DEP. So he reached out to the DEP to get permission. And they're like, well, no, we don't want you bringing your house to your construction any closer to the water source. He's like, water? What water? What are you talking about? Well, about 600 feet over that way, there's a gully, and that gully is for drainage runoff. He's like, that riverbed's been dry for years. Doesn't matter. So they rejected him. And he's like, okay, so what do I do with a front porch that's eaten up by termites? Somebody's going to step over there, thing's going to collapse on them, someone's going to die. I need it from you in writing that you're rejecting me from being able to repair this very dangerous situation, which could end up leading to someone's death. So this way, it's not going to be on me because I tried to fix it. It's going to be on you because you denied me. And he kept arguing that point and trying to put the blame on them, wanting to get it in writing and on paper. Then eventually they granted him permission to tear it down and rebuild his front porch. It's like he wasn't building it any further out, his house. He was just wanting to replace the porch that was already there. But this shows you how some of these things, like you would think, why would an environmental protection agency forbid somebody from building a front porch? And not building it, rebuilding it. All right, the Coastal Area Facility Review Act, CAFRA, it requires a clustering for open space and planned unit developments. And the Waterfront Development Law, the Act, regulates outside the coastal areas. The DEP must approve plans for waterfront development on any navigable water or stream. After Sandy, Hurricane Sandy we had, FEMA redrew the flood maps too, dictating what areas they could further regulate. We got the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act, which has rules intended to protect the public from unscrupulous developers and marketers from undue sales pressure, like with timeshares, where buyers have 7 days to cancel their contracts. That's only pertaining to new construction, though. Advertisements for new construction for out-of-state properties marketed to New Jersey residents, and in-state subdivisions with at least 100 lots or no less than 10 units if there's common area elements involved, stipulate that all contracts and disclosures must be available in the same language the property's advertised in. So, I mean, if you're going to advertise your real estate services in a different language, that's fine. But if you actually advertise a particular property in another language, you better have all the contracts and disclosures available in that same language. All right, so that language requirement that all new construction advertised in New Jersey also applies to all properties, not just the new ones, from both in and out of state, to have contracts and disclosures available in the same language that the property was advertised. So now we can highlight that here on page 345 and 346. And note the note I put down here at the bottom. Advertising in languages requiring disclosure in the same language applies to both new and existing properties. Because a lot of these laws usually pertain only to the new construction. This one, when it comes to the right of rescission to back out of a contract, but pertaining to the advertising language, that's why I wrote the word all here above all properties that are advertised in New Jersey in languages other than English. Subsequent forms must be available to prospective purchasers in the same language as was used in the original advertising. Now, when you got those highlights,
Got
you
it.
don't, you don't have to write this note down at the bottom. All you got to do is write the word all and do this highlight, and it pretty much gives you the same info. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, just that I have got it.
Oh, okay. So you did say something. You got it. Thank you. Otherwise, I'm waiting. All right. Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act rules are intended to protect the public, once again, from unscrupulous developers and marketers. You got the 7 calendar days to cancel the contracts, advertisements for new construction of out-of-state properties, and those in-state subdivisions with 100 lots or more, or no less than 10, if there's common area elements that are involved, apply to this. The language requirement applies to all properties advertised in New Jersey. And page 346 here, it says that. Although they don't talk about the part less than 10 units or more than 10 units if there's common area elements involved. I think they mention that. I only see here with more than 100 lots or with a homeowners association. Yeah, but that's when there's at least 10 units. And then over here for the registration of out-of-state properties marketed to New Jersey residents, that they require their property to be registered with the real estate commission before they could offer them for sale. They say it applies to the original offerings here, not to single resales. That means new construction. A lot of this is just repeating the same stuff now, if you're noticing that. Okay. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the Uniform Construction Code, the UCC. There's two UCCs we learned about. The Uniform Commercial Code, which regulates the sale of businesses. And then we have the UCC, the Uniform Construction Code. This one is the state's minimum standard for construction. It's a database of building and construction codes that's maintained by the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs. They regulate construction, alterations, renovation, occupancy, and use of buildings. And if your municipality doesn't have its own building code enforcement officials, either way, the DCA inspects public buildings and schools, commercial properties like large shopping centers and buildings with 3 or more lots, not counting the unit that the owner lives in. So here, all right, Uniform Construction Code, right, UCC above that. That must be followed by local communities. The commissioner of the DCA regulates construction, alterations, renovation, and occupancy of use of buildings. And I wrote good to know down here. This is pertaining to existing buildings. You know, new building codes are always being created. New zoning laws are always being created. But pertaining to building codes, since your house was built, there's been a lot of new building codes and changes to the law. I'm sure. Don't know how old your houses are, but I'm sure there has been. So, does your house need to be brought up to code? Not unless you do any improvements or repairs that require the permits, then any work that's done has to be up to code. Now, same thing with commercial buildings. The building doesn't need to be brought up to code just because they add or change laws about the construction, the UCC. However, if you do any work on it, that work needs to be brought up to code. And if the work is over 50% of the value of the building, then the entire building needs to be brought up to code. Otherwise, if it's less than 50%, only the work that was done needs to be up to code, the current building codes. That's good to know. I've known people with commercial properties before, bars and such, where they needed to get some work done, but they didn't want to do it because if they did it, then they'd have to bring the whole building up to code, and then they can't afford that. And, you know, I told the owner, the lady that owned that one bar, I told her, I was like, listen, you really need to get this taken care of. She had problems with her sewage pipes and such there. And I said, you need to, basically, in order to fix this, you need to tear down those bathrooms, which are on the outside wall of the building. You need to tear them down. You need to dig that ground up. You need to get those new things put in, new piping and everything. I said, they're not going to require the whole building be brought up to code because that's not going to be equal to 50% of the value. only the new construction would need to be brought up to code, that those bathrooms would need to be handicap accessible now, which they should have been before anyway, but that's all she would have to do. All right, New Warranty and Builders Registration Act says that all new construction in the state of New Jersey needs to come with a 10-year builder's warranty. They basically buy it from the Department of Community Affairs that regulates the contractors. So in Trenton, they buy that warranty from the state. So you never know. The builders can't self-warranty, because what if they go out of business? Oh, all those homeowners, they get a 10-year warranty, that the building is free from defects. So New Warranty Builders Registration Act requires all builders of new homes must register a warranty against new defects for up to 10 years. Now, it says for varying periods up to 10 years. That's because, hey, the framing of the house, the structure itself, 10 years, but maybe the HVAC system is not going to be as long, or the other items like the dishwasher and stuff, you're not going to get the 10-year warranty on, so it's for varying periods up to 10 years, depending on what it's for. Okay? But the structure itself, 10 years. And the DCA in Trenton is who they buy and purchase and register that warranty with. If there's no enforcement, if there's no local building code enforcement, it's state inspectors that come out that'll inspect the buildings. And construction permits have to be issued before any construction, alteration, demolition, or change of use or occupancy of a building can be undertaken. So I want you to highlight the New Home Warranty and Builders Registration Act here for 10 years. That'll be an exam question, I'm pretty sure. All new construction has to come with that 10-year builder's warranty. All right, so how do construction permits work? Well, the Uniform Construction Code requires a construction permit be issued before you do any work or demolition. Applicants must provide info like where the property is located, what the construction plans are, the estimated cost of the work, and the names of and addresses of the owners and contractors that are going to be doing the work. Local construction official then must inspect the application and the property to determine whether it conforms with the requirements of the building codes. And within 20 days, they must either approve the plans and issue a permit or reject it in writing with cause for the rejection. If rejected, the applicant may revise the plans to meet the requirements, or they could appeal the rejection to the Construction Board of Appeals. Now, once the permit's issued, the construction permit may be revoked if it contains any false or misleading information or omissions, or if the construction is not started within 12 months of the permit issue date, or if work is suspended for 3 months or longer after the work has begun. That's basically how the permit process works throughout the state. Good to know. All right. And here, this is just talking about the construction permits are required for before any construction operations, demo, etc., or change of use of a building. And then here it gets into that 20 days and everything you've seen on the previous slide. It's all right here. All right, so before a building can be occupied after the construction's been done, it needs to be inspected again. And if it's new construction, it needs to be inspected before anybody can occupy the premises. So no new or altered buildings in New Jersey can be used or occupied until a certificate of occupancy has been issued. Now, some municipalities will call it a certificate of occupancy only if it's new construction, and then they'll give it a different name for the permit if it's an existing building that was having work done to it. Some municipalities call it a CO still. Others call it a COC. a certificate of compliance. And if there's no work that was done and it's just a simple transfer of ownership that's undergone, some municipalities still call it a CO inspection. Others call it a CCO, a continued certificate of occupancy, just showing that there's been no new work that was done without permits and that everything is up to code there. Okay. Now, this isn't your home inspection that you get. This is the inspector that you got to, the owner, the seller, the owner pays for this inspection with the city to send out the inspector to issue that CO. Got those highlights?
Yes.
Now, New Jersey also has requirement for smoke and fire detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. And so the smoke detectors have to be on each level of the building and within 10 feet of any sleeping quarters. That's where they need to be located. Carbon monoxide detectors, as of the 2019 law that was updated, requires that they contain 10-year sealed batteries. You can't have a carbon monoxide detector where you replace the batteries anymore. Throw them in the garbage. Go buy a new one. You're not going to pass the CO inspection or the city fire inspection. Sometimes those are city separate inspections within a municipality. Sometimes it's one inspection, okay, that inspects both those things. Because you got to get the CO and a fire inspection when selling property. So our job as a listing agent, if you're a listing agent, would be to make sure that the seller gets arranges for and gets those CO and fire inspections taken care of. Now, homes built after 1978 require hardwired detectors. Even though most municipalities require one on each level, as well as a hardwired with battery backups. For me, I've noticed that a lot of the fire marshals, they don't, this law requiring the hardwired detectors so the batteries can't die on them. But most fire inspectors, I notice, want the battery ones because they say that if there's a fire in a house and the wires get melted, the alarm's not going to go off. You need to have that battery backup. They really want you to have those battery backups. So fire extinguishers must be mounted in the kitchens within 10 feet of them using the hardware that they came with. They must be rated to put out ABC type fires and must be under 10 pounds so that you could easily handle them. And some of those fire extinguishers can be very heavy. You get 50-pound or more fire extinguishers. 10-pound one, it's a small portable fire extinguisher that you could easily grab in an emergency. This was actually made state law under acting Governor Richard Cody upon the suggestion of a fifth grader. When we've seen a rash of when they were doing fire safety in a school, the acting governor, visited the school, and a fifth grader suggested to him that he create a law that requires fire extinguishers be in the kitchens. Because at the time, there was a rash of incidents that we've seen on the news where, the parents were cooking in the kitchen and the little children, they reach up, they're so curious, they reach up and grab the handles of the pots and pans. This is why we know we got to turn the handles inward to the stove for our pots and pans, because children will reach up and grab them. The hot pans will fall on them that could be containing grease. And if that catches fire, what's the worst thing you could throw on a grease fire? Water, right? It inflames the fire and spreads it out, makes it worse. And if you're in the kitchen next to a sink, the parent sees their child on fire, they want to put the fire out, they would throw water on them, and then it would just get worse. So because there was a rash of these incidents in a short period of time, they actually did pass this law that required a small fire extinguisher under 10 pounds, rated to put out ABC type fires, and mounted in the kitchen or within 10 feet of the kitchen. Okay. Now, as of March 2025, our last governor, before he left office, he removed this as a state law for some reason. I don't know. So it's no longer a state law that requires the fire extinguishers. However, I found that most municipalities that I've done closings in, the local fire code inspector still requires those fire extinguishers. So even though state law doesn't require it, the municipalities can. You follow? And most of them do. So I'm just going to keep this here. Just be aware that it's not state law anymore, but it's more local ordinances, fire ordinances that would require it. So let's do these highlights. And at the end of this sentence here, or under carbon monoxide detector, write 10-year sealed battery. That's as of 2019. And then where they talk about the approved fire extinguisher, write type ABC under 10 pounds. I don't know if you'll need to know that for exams, but you definitely need to know it for working in the business. Because it's up to us. Don't just wait for tell the homeowner, hey, you need to arrange for the CO and fire inspection. And then they come and they fail the inspection. And then they got to reschedule it after they buy and install a fire extinguisher and the carbon monoxide detector with the 10-year sealed battery. Tell them this stuff in advance. What I do, I carry toolkits with me in my truck. And I got spare carbon monoxide detectors and fire extinguishers. So if they don't have them in the house, I'll install them. And then this way, because I've had instances where the homeowner would schedule the inspections, but then I seen that it wasn't going to pass inspection because they didn't have a carbon monoxide detector, or it wasn't mounted in the right place, or it doesn't have the 10-year sealed battery, or they didn't have the smoke detector. So I would install it and then I just build them for it so we don't fail the inspection and then have a time delay because we need to schedule another one. And then if you got to schedule an inspection within a certain period of time, this is how towns start extorting people. If the inspection is needed and the certificate is needed in less than 10 days or something like that from the closing, the price of the inspection goes up from like $25 or $35 to $100 or more. The city really gets you on that. Okay, you guys got these highlights in the notes here?
Yes.
So what is an ABC type fire? Here's that story that I told you about where acting Governor Richard Cody, was at that school and a fifth grader, gave him that suggestion. But a type A fire is to put out trash, wood, and paper fires. Type B is for liquids, gases, and solvents. And type C is for electrical fires. And we have a hotel, motel, multiple dwelling health and safety law enacted to ensure New Jersey residents decent standard and safe units of dwelling space. So the state inspection, often referred to as a green card inspection, that's the industry's lingo for it, must be performed at least once every 5 years. And this applies to buildings with 3 or more rental units, not counting the unit that the owner lives in. So if it's a 3-family house and the owner lives in it, does not require the state inspection. The inspection can be done by the local municipality. The state inspection is only required every 5 years if there's 3 or more rental units, not counting the one that the owner lives in. So 4-family house, doesn't matter owner occupied or not, needs a state inspection. And hotels and motels with 10 or more units or sleeping facilities for 25 or more people have to be inspected once every 3 years. And those inspections can be spot inspections without an appointment. So let's highlight multiple dwellings with 3 or more units are inspected at least once every 5 years, and hotels at least once every 3. Okay. Y'all got that?
Yes.
Okay. And that concludes this chapter. Let's do the key terms to review for chapter 18. Charges to developer for extra roads, schools, and so forth. What do we call those extra charges to the developer?
Impact fees.
7 is A, impact fees. A test of the soil's absorption and drainage capacities. What do we call that? And when I showed you the video for it.
Percolation test.
Perk test there, a 10 is B. Division of property into more lots than one. Division of property into more than one building lot.
Subdivision.
16 is C. A community with dense zoning and developers plan for entire land use. It's a PUD. It's a planned unit development. 12 is D.
Okay.
A group setting standards for local subdivisions. Who's the group that sets standards for subdivisions?
Planning board.
13 is E. A halt to development.
Moratorium.
A moratorium. 9 is F. New Jersey standards for building.
Uniform construction code.
UCC, Uniform Construction Code. Yes, 17 is G. The U.S. requirement for some developments to be registered with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB.
Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act.
Correct. 8 is H. State regulations for builders of new homes. State regulations. All new homes have to come with what?
Warranty and Builders Registration Act.
A 10-year builder's warranty. Yeah. State regulations for builders of new homes. Warranty of builders. It's not really regulations. It's a regulation that they're required to come with a warranty, I guess. 18 is I. A permit permits the buyers up to 7 calendar days to cancel contracts for the lease or purchase of such lands.
Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act.
Yep, 15 is J. A law requiring registration of certain developments within New Jersey.
Planned Real Estate Development Act.
Yes, 11 is K. Zoning that allows more living units to be built per acre than usual.
Density zoning.
5 is L. A map of a town, section, or subdivision.
Flat.
A plat map. 14 is M. New Jersey state agency that approves and registers some out-of-state property.
Bureau of Subdivided Land Sales.
Correct. The one is N, and that's a part. That bureau is actually a division. They're actually part of the real estate commission. It's really one guy at the real estate commission. His job is to go inspect out of state properties that are marketed to New Jersey, and they got to pay for his hotel and his food and lodgings and everything. So he basically travels to all these vacation destination areas. That's his job, to inspect the paperwork and everything and make sure the property actually exists. Okay, local municipalities authorization for building plans.
Construction permit.
3 is O. Engineering reports often required before building permits are issued.
Environmental impact statement.
Yep, the EIS, environmental impact statements. 6 is P. Turning over the property, a private property, to a municipality. Give land to government. Well, I'm sorry.
Dedication.
Yes, dedication. 4 is Q. Putting living units close together to leave more open space.
Clustering.
2 is R, that's clustering, and that concludes chapter 18.